everyone. We lost one of our panelists, but I'm sure she'll be back in a minute. My name is Jackie. I am the Marketing and Outreach Coordinator for Ronald Fatula & Associates, and would love to welcome you tonight on this beautiful day to our first webinar that we are able to do with Terry White, who's a wonderful geriatric care manager. So many of you, I'm sure, are already aware of Terry's abilities and her achievements. And Ron and myself have known Terry for quite a while, so we're very, very excited to get an opportunity to finally work with her. So there's a silver lining to every cloud, and this is this COVID scenario and the need to do Zoom webinars has finally brought Ron Fatula and Terry White together. So we know you're going to enjoy this presentation this evening. It's going to be extremely informative, and we're going to be talking about the geriatric care manager and the importance of having your geriatric care manager involved as a caregiver, as a caregiver, as well as if you are the patient or client and you don't have a caregiver, then you especially need one. Ron's going to be speaking about the important legal aspects of long-term care planning and how you can really work in tandem with your care manager to ensure that we've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. Long-term care planning is something that kind of sneaks up on a lot of people, and it's much better to be proactive and have everything in place. So I'm going to start out by just giving you a little bit of information about Miss Terry White. Let me unmute her because she's muted. There we go. Terry is a gerontologist, and she provides comprehensive and inclusive approach to assessing and providing direct care management services to aging adults. She is sensitive to the issues facing aging adults and their changing needs. And after years of working in the city municipalities, she became a caregiver for several of her own family members. During this time, she became a sought-after advocate by worrying seniors and stressed families who needed consultation. This inspired her to become a geriatric care manager to assist families with the challenges of aging and caregiving. In 2010, she founded a labor of love elder care, and she began focusing on community education and elder care preparedness. In addition to providing direct services for the care recipient, she also provides stable services for the caregiver, including family mediation and coaching. She provides an application and resource support for property management companies in New York City for seniors and special needs tenants. She is one of the founding members of the Crown Heights Farm Share, where she ensures seniors and other underserved groups have access to affordable organic foods. This is one of the things that I love about her the most. She is just a very caring and dedicated person to the community. She recently been appointed as the chairperson of the American Society on Aging Constituent Group Forum on Religion and Spirituality on Aging. So Terry, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Jackie. Thank you for also that comment about my care and compassion. We have lots of conversations about that. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to Understanding Care Options with myself, Terry White, as a gerontologist, and Ron Fatula as an elder law attorney. You can go ahead. So those are just some of the lovely things that I have done. Tonight, I just want to talk about the learning objectives, which is to basically increase the knowledge about a geriatric care manager, to describe the benefits of working with a geriatric care manager. You can go to the next slide. the documents needed to ensure continuity of care in case of an emergency, the importance of having an emergency plan, increased knowledge about strategies to, I probably won't talk about a lot of the COVID stuff because all of this really centers around COVID. So I won't identify it individually. Next. So I was born to older parents. That is me in the blue and white shirt. I have been that height since I was 12 years old. I have not grown another inch since. So I was long and lanky. My parents were older. My mother was 39. My dad was 41 when I was born. And back in the 60s, it wasn't popular for someone to have a child at that age. And that is my oldest sister next to me. And in the picture in the middle, the other two pictures are pictures of my sister's mother, who are now, my sister's mother is now the only one of them that is still alive, and she has mid-stage dementia at this point. Next. I was a caregiver to my grandmother, my father, my aunt, and my mother. I was a caregiver to my grandmother, my father, and my aunt simultaneously. My grandmother had great health. She took no medication. She took care of herself until she was about 94 or so. The last 4 years of her life, her health just declined, but she still took no medication. My grandmother literally transitioned at 98 from old age. The only thing my grandmother could not take was an aspirin because she had an ulcer and she couldn't eat hot food. That was it. So she is my barometer for healthy aging. And not being able to, having the need to take medications. My dad had renal failure and then developed dementia, mid-stage dementia. So he was in a skilled nursing facility. My grandmother was home all along to the end. My aunt, who thought she was taking care of my grandmother, which was her mother, had all sorts of health issues. She had asthma, she had all kinds of pulmonary and coronary issues. She had a lot of health challenges. I ended up taking care of her. She actually passed away about 4 months after my grandmother did. And then my mother, one day, had shortness of breath. She called the taxi. She went to the emergency room and never came out again, just like that. She was preparing to do some community work the next day, and my mother never walked again, basically never talked again. She had a rare disease called myasthenia gravis, and she was diagnosed at 87. And it just happened so quickly. Thank God there was some level of preparedness that was already in place because of my father's illness. Next. So because I had to take care of them, I was looking for resources. And at the time I was working for New York City Transit. I was also raising children. I was helping out my aunt. I was the caregiver. I was helping out my mother. I was the caregiver for the rest of them. And every time I went to get a service, they would run me from here to there to the next place to the next place. And I was like, this is ridiculous. It has to be a better way. You send older adults from one place to another to get services. They're frail. They have mobility issues. This is a challenge. So I was trying to find some place that was more like a one-stop shop. And basically I couldn't find one. Um, so that's how a labor of love elder care was basically born. At the time, my neighbors they knew my situation. They would stop and ask me about my parents. You can go to the next slide. They would ask me about my parents. They would ask me how was I obtaining services. And next thing I knew, on a Saturday morning, there would be 4 or 5 seniors sitting in the asking me questions. So I began filling out paperwork for them, responding to their questions, helping them to navigate services, helping them to find resources. And then one day, a neighbor of mine said, you know, that's a real thing. There is such a thing called geriatric care management. So I then went back to school to Hunter School of Social Work and received a care management certification. So what is a geriatric care manager? A geriatric care manager basically is the person who navigates services for you. I am a gerontologist by degree, so we do the study of aging across the entire lifespan. A lot of people just think that it's the study of old aging as the opposite of pediatrics, but really it's not. It's the study of aging across the entire lifespan. So basically, just like me, I knew I needed a geriatric care manager when the task and responsibilities became extremely overwhelming for me. They became, the time was limited. I was working nights, and then I spent all day either looking for services or caregiving. And I was, you know, also trying to have a life. I was trying to have a social life. Fortunately for me, I didn't have to deal with disagreements about care decisions for my grandmother and my aunt, more so for my dad, but my sister and I didn't really have, and my mother, my sister and I really didn't have disagreements. We had conversations around the needs and services. And also, when does it become unsafe for them to live in their current environment? Fortunately, my grandmother was able to stay at home. Uh, you can stay on that quote, Jackie. Fortunately, my grandmother stayed at home. My father needed additional support services. And then I ran across this quote one day from Rosalind Carter, who was our former First Lady. She also runs the Rosalind Carter Institute for Aging in the state of Georgia. It's still there. And it said that basically there are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need care. And all of us fall in one of those categories throughout our lifetime. Next. As I was saying, the roles and responsibilities of case management. You can go to the next slide. Basically, we are professionals, and our goal is to ensure yourself and your loved one's quality of life and to reduce the stress of the family. I was stressed. I didn't have a high level of stress because I'm really good at managing my stress, but it's extremely stressful. I needed help with navigating these systems because one system would say you need blue, the other, they would send you to another system. The other system would say, we don't take blue, we take orange. And there was always this, this disconnect with services. We also allow you to express your wishes, and then we connect you to those resources. We also supervise your older adults' care and help resolve family issues. Next. The one before. You went too fast. So basically, the one before that. Yep. We develop a comprehensive care plan for you. And once we develop the care plan, which is basically an assessment, which is something I will talk about toward the end of this, so that you can maximize the independence of your loved one, whether it's to age in place or if they're in another facility. Most geriatric care managers specialize in just elder care. And as I said, because I'm a gerontologist, we help at a labor of love elder care, we help anybody in a caregiving situation, regardless of their age. There are a lot of younger adults out here who need support. And sometimes it's not just long-term support, it's short-term support. So you can go to the family support slide. So how we help families, we help them adjust to their new normal. For myself, because I grew up with older adults, I didn't know the difference between helping out and actually becoming, yes, that one, and helping out and actually becoming a caregiver. There are also people who are long distance caregivers. They live in one state and their loved one lives in another state. We help them address their care concerns, the care plan conflicts, and the familial issues. We all have family history, family issues, some large, some small. The next thing we do is help the healthcare systems communication. As I was saying, sometimes it's the hospital system, sometimes it's an actual healthcare system. We're better now with having systems, but before, doctors were just individual doctors, whether it was your primary care physician or your specialist, and we needed them to talk to each other. We need all of the doctors, all of the support services, all of the tertiary services, and the family and the client to talk to each other. And I need to identify services that help meet the goal of the caregiver and of the care recipient. The next thing that we do might be housing support. We select appropriate housing options for you. We provide information on how to age in place, as I said, like my grandmother did, and also relocation support. Nowadays, there are people who, especially now during COVID, who want to come live with their families. And there are also people who are leaving the city to move to a suburb. Many people come from other countries, do their adult life here in the United States, but as they age, they want to go back home, wherever that may be. Jackie, you can go to the financial slide. We help with that one. We support families with bill management, especially now that everything is online. We either send them to services or show them how to set their bills up online. There are a lot of people in New York City that have either outlived their children or have opted to never have children. So they don't always have a younger person around to support them. We help them find resources, especially those who have chronic illnesses, to help pay for medications, to activate insurances, whether it's long-term care insurance. We review your life insurance policies. Most of them require assessments, and there's a lot of concerns. Some people don't even know where those items are, so we have to retrieve them. And of course, a power of attorney, which Ron will talk about in detail later. Next. Local resources. I know a lot of the local resources here in New York City. That's why you really want to work with someone who is local to the area that your loved one is living in, even if you don't live there. I have a vast amount of knowledge about a lot of the union's non-monetary retirement benefits, especially from transit, from DC 37, Verizon. And those are usually the clients that I help. They have worked for those organizations, Department of Education, other resources for when you're in the hospital and you need to go home. There are a lot of challenges with that because usually they hand you a stack of paper and they say, here, I need you to look over this, sign this, and give it back to me. They really don't let you take it home. Well, sometimes they do. They say you need to go home with home care. How am I going to do that? Sometimes they say, okay, call you at 10 o'clock and say that your loved one is going to be discharged today. I'm at work. How am I going to manage that? I get calls like that to my office on a regular basis. And you can't put these services together in an hour. It takes a lot of planning, and discharge basically happens from the second day that you enter any hospital facility. That's when the planning to return to your community should begin. Next. Legal. Ron is going to handle this. I refer to elder law attorneys, estate planners, wealth managers. We are biggest referrals back and forth to each other. I need them to make sure all of the paperwork is in order. They need us, geriatric care managers, to do the legwork. The other part of the legal system that I participate in is expert opinion for surrogates court. When someone opens a guardianship case, oftentimes they ask for a geriatric care manager to do an assessment of the client and present the documentation in court. And all of my assessments are admissible in court. So they can call to pull these records 10 years from now. So that's why it's really important that we follow the HIPAA laws and that we follow to make sure that your information is secure. Next. So I don't want to just sound like this decline in aging is normal. It's not. Healthy aging is what's normal. And in order to obtain that, we have to have a social circle, exercise, mental health, emotional health, so that we are able to continue to provide our own what's called ADLs, activities of daily living. So we can continue to bathe ourselves, groom ourselves, just to be able to move. That is the key to optimum health right now, is movement in any ways that we can. So I understand during COVID how people really wanted to get out to the parks, why they were creating these spaces so that people could walk, especially older adults, because they just need to move so that our muscles do not atrophy. Nutrition is a big deal as well. Most of us during COVID either gained weight or lost weight. We either ate better or ate worse. We've become more conscious in a lot of areas. And for some it's been good, and for others not so much. We also provide support services. the home care, the housekeeping, companionship, the therapies. That's all of the things. These are all of the things that a geriatric care manager coordinates for you and your family. And if it sounds like a lot, it's because it really is a lot. And it's all done really around advocacy. We are advocating for you and your loved one. We ask that the client tell us what their wishes are. We know part of ageism, people talk at older adults. They don't really talk to them or talk with them. It's not often that people ask them what it is that they want. How do they want to age? People tell them, you should do this and you should do that and you shouldn't do this and you can't have that. They take away their keys for driving. You know, it's a lot for them. And we really don't understand psychologically what they go through. So we create a team of support to make sure that their needs happen in a safe manner. We don't allow people to do things that are unsafe. Next, because I talked through all of that. Next, one more. Spiritual support. Spiritual support for me is key. What is the thing that gives you life? How are you connected to life? I'm not interested if you're a Christian, an atheist, a Pan-African, Sikhism. It's fine for me. It's what works for you. And how can we provide those services for you, especially in care facilities? Do you need meditation? Are you into aromatherapy, sound therapy, color therapy? Are there certain rituals that you want to go through or that you need to go through while you are in a care facility that's going to get you through? Faith and healing goes hand in hand, and we want to make sure that you get whatever you need to make yourself whole. Next. So unfortunately, there are some facts. 7% of adults who survive to age 65 will need help with routine chores and errands. 48% of adults who survive to age 65 will actually pay for help. 3 and 4, 75% of women will need assistance. That's partially because women live longer than men. Women are also the primary caregivers for children, for men, for themselves, sometimes for multiple generations of people. 22% of older adults will need help for just 2 to 4 years. 34% of adults who survive to 85 might receive some nursing home care. And we need to be prepared for that. Next. Yes, so that's all part of this long-term care. So here are some wonderful numbers. And these numbers are from 2017. And these numbers only assume partial care. So if you're in a nursing home at a semi-private room, it says that New York State, the median is $11,613. Private room, you see these numbers. And these are monthly numbers. These are not annual numbers. This is per month. My mother was in a specialty unit. She was in a vent unit. Every care facility doesn't have a vent unit, and the beds are limited and the waiting list is long. And during COVID, that is part of the reason why the waiting list was so extremely long. And this home care number is basically if you only have 44 hours of care per week. Think about that. That's not even someone with serious health challenges who need 24-hour care. As I was saying, my mother was in a specialty unit, so it cost $650 a day for her to be in a facility. Next, and she was there for 7 years. So you can do the math. So this is a stat that I found from 2016. So this is 4 years later, these numbers have gone up. So these are long-term care supports that spent, and this is billions with a B. I'm just gonna go to the next slide. We won't even really talk about these numbers. We'll let Ron refer to these numbers, and then we will come back to them. And to make all of this happen, you need these 5 important documents: a healthcare proxy, a durable power of attorney, a living will, an appropriate trust, because there's many, many, many different types of trust. And now I tell people a list of usernames and passwords, since most of our information is in the cloud. Someone has to know how to get in the cloud so that we can access your information. So the benefits of planning ahead is increased ability to receive the care that you want in a location that you prefer, reduce risk of burdening friends and family, increase peace of mind, wider care options. When you plan ahead, you have more options. We know how it is when we're looking for something in crisis. Increase time to make the financial plans to secure the care you prefer. Reduce risk of crisis decision making. We all know how it is to be under duress and making these lifelong decisions. Delayed entry into a higher level of care, such as a nursing home. Reduced costs associated with long-term care. And of course, to identify a trained professional to help navigate the process. That would be me, or someone like me. And how we do all of this is basically through an assessment. And assessment, we do a psychological, it's a psychosocial. So basically we do the psych part, we do a MMSE, which is a mini mental state exam. A lot of the psychological exams that we administer are mandated. They're not, we don't do them by choice, they're mandated. We have to do them, again, because these documents are admissible in court, and these are some of the factors that they look for in surrogate's court if guardianship is needed for yourself or your loved one. So the psych, which is the mental coping skills and behavior patterns, the geographical, which is the environmental or the settings where the person lives. There's also economical, which is the financial ability to care for themselves. The social, you can go to the next one, Jackie, which is the community, friends, family support. And again, the spiritual, what connects you to all of life? And the one thing I talk about to do all of this is that you need this. So if you have your phone, if you're not on your phone, take a picture of this slide and make sure that you go and download this document. This is a document, it has like 40 something items on here that you really need to know where they are at all times. Some of them are personal, like a birth certificate, a marriage license, for extremely older adults. A lot of them, their birth certificates does not match their birthplace and time and date. Many of them found that out when they applied for Social Security. Some were born at home. So we want you to be able to get these documents so that you can have them to give to Ron when he is doing a Medicaid application or asset protection. The medical records, your medications, your deed to your home, your lease, your financial documents, all of these things need to be in one place. I would poll a question to say how many of you have all of these documents in one place, but I will not do that today. So basically, all of this that I just talked about, I am available to do. My team is available to do 24/7. I'm on call 24/7. The phone rings. I had a client recently, 4:06 in the morning, call. I was 2 hours away. So I did a 2-hour drive back to the city to make sure that the client was safe, because the client had, thought they were in an unsafe condition. People fall any time of the day or night. Things happen any time of the day or night. My mother was fine. She was planning for something else, and like flicking a light switch, that was it. She never walked again. Next slide. So this is the one thing I am extremely proud of right now. During COVID, I have 0 clients who had COVID, 0 staff members who had COVID. I had home health aides that went into homes every single day. We worked every day, and everybody is safe because I provide them, the staff, the family, and the employees with everything that they need so that we can keep a safe environment. Put some serious rules and regulations in place, including not being able to work on more than one case at a time. I know it was going to decrease their financial capacity, but I felt as though it was necessary to save my clients. My oldest client right now, she's almost 100 years old, and I can't have anything happen to her. I can't have anything happen to me. And they can't have anything happen to themselves. So this is a number that I'm extremely proud of. And a lot of people really, really saw their money's worth because they didn't have to deal with a care facility during this time. So with all of that, next, Jackie. So I'm not going to take, you could put your questions in the chat.
Actually, Terry, do you want to go ahead and answer a couple of them before we move on?
Sure. No, we can answer them after Ron speaks, because he might answer some of them.
Okay, gotcha.
So you can go to the next slide. So here is my contact information. You can take a picture of this. Most of you, this will be sent to after the webinar. You will, when you receive a thank you, you will receive our contact information. And Ron is going to give you the wonderful yet absolutely meaningful and ever-changing legal portion of this presentation. So if you have any questions about care management, you need any support, you feel free to reach out to me. If you need some legal stuff, you can reach out to Ron. And I just thank you for your time, your energy, your care for your loved ones. I know it's not easy. I've been there. I know it's not easy. But know that there is help, there is support for you. You can have peace of mind. And that's what we're here for, myself and my staff. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. So everyone, I'm very excited to move on and to introduce my wonderful boss, Ronald Fatula, who is a certified elder law attorney, a founder and the managing attorney of Ronald Fatula and Associates. And he has, for over 30 years, achieved so much for his clients and all seniors and people of special needs in the state of New York. He's known for his elder law, estate planning, and special needs planning as well, and is amazingly award-winning. He's just received his 14th year award for Best Lawyers and also 14 years as a super lawyer, so we're very proud of him. He has served recently on the Executive Council of AARP New York, as well as a past president of the New York chapter of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, which is NALA. He's chaired NALA's Public Policy and Public Relations Committee for many years in the past. He's now co-chair of the Financial Planning and Investment Committee of the Elder Law and Special Needs section of the New York State Bar Association, and serves as co-chair of the board of the Alzheimer's Association Long Island chapter. He surrounds himself with a group of wonderful attorneys who are just about, maybe not quite, but just about as dedicated and honest and full of integrity as Ron. It's kind of hard to beat Ron, that's for sure. I'm very, very proud to work with Ron and with the attorneys at Ronald Fatula and Associates. Every day, I think the firm makes a difference, a huge difference in the lives of caregivers, in the lives of seniors, in the lives of their adult children, and those with special needs. And I'm very excited to, as I said, be part of this tonight. Also, I wanted to tell you, Ron is a partner with a company called Advice Period, which is a leading wealth management firm where he delivers conflict-free, sophisticated planning based on and advice to his clients. So he really, when he works with a client, can really look at all the pictures involved. He is a fiduciary and always tries to help his clients do what's best for them. He treats each client as an individual. And we're, again, very excited to be working with you today, Terry. So, Ron, there are a couple of questions already that in the chat, in the Q&A box, which we can bring up later that are probably in your realm of expertise. So I'll let you take over.
All right. Well, what a great introduction. Thank you so much. And Terry, thank you so much. That was terrific. Geriatric care managers and attorneys really do need to work together. And, you know, it's just so much better when we do work together, so much more efficient, and that's the way things ought to be. And Terry, what I really do like about you, I'm going to say this publicly, is that not only are you a great GCM or geriatric care manager, you also just simply care. You care about your clients, you care about all aspects of them, and you take it that extra step. I think that spirituality piece is very important for so many of my clients. It's really crucial for them. So thank you so much, Terry. So I'm going to share my screen, and I do have, here we go, some slides. So this is the information to reach me and my firm. We have a simple phone number, which is 1-877-ELDER-LAW or 212-751-7600, or on Long Island, 516-466-4422. And let's get going here. All right, so just as we have Terry, you know, the geriatric care manager, and you know what she does, you want to get all of your, the pieces of the puzzle in place. Look, if you're a caregiver, that means there's an issue. You're taking care of someone. You know, just as Terry said, you either are a caregiver, was a caregiver, or you're gonna need care. There's 4 categories. I know I'm missing one, but that's the reality of things. And I was a caregiver. I was a caregiver for my mother, and for many, many years. She had dementia for many years. And boy, it's not an easy task. And you need someone like Terry. And you need a good attorney. You need a financial advisor, and you need a CPA. So these are the 4 disciplines that you need to get together. So when there is a diagnosis, for example, of dementia, you got to get into gear. You need to get your doctors in place for whatever is ailing, your neurologist if there's dementia, whatever specialty you might need, whether it's a cardiologist on top of that or whoever it might be. Get your doctors in order, but also you need to get a plan in place. And that's what we do for the financial plan. The attorney and the financial advisor need to get this together. You'll need a CPA, and if you're a caregiver, you're also going to need a geriatric care manager. And Terry is just one of the best out there. She's someone that really cares and will tackle all aspects, even the spiritual. And again, I reiterate that because I think that's so special, and I don't see that you getting that anywhere else. Terry did mention the 5 important documents that people should have. I'm going to get into these in a little bit more detail. We're running a little late, so I probably will take this till about 8:10. So if you can stick with us, that would be great. The first document, everybody thinks, and they're right, I need a last will and testament. And especially as you age, and especially in light of COVID, and especially if you're a caregiver, you want to make sure that the individual you're taking care of has all of this in place to a T. And hopefully you'll come and see us before that individual loses the capacity to sign documents. But even if there is a lack of capacity, still call us, because we could review the documentation, and if needed, we can actually start a guardianship action. But we don't want to do that if we don't have to. So let's try to get these documents in place. So number 1 is a last will and testament. Where will your assets go when you pass away? It's either going to go through the beneficiary designation on an asset, or through your will, or through your living trust. Now, the living trust is the gold standard of how we should plan in most cases. And that's because we could not only get assets out of the individual's name for Medicaid planning purposes, and even estate planning purposes. So we get the assets out through the trust, but the individual could also keep the income. And we preserve all of the tax consequences. We make sure that in most cases there are 0 tax consequences. And without that trust, there typically will be very large tax consequences. And I'm going to give you some examples later on. But you first need to start with a will. And if you don't have a will, your assets will go pursuant to a schedule that New York State has set forth in the Estates, Powers, and Trust Law, Section 4-1.1. But you don't want that. So let's say you're a caregiver, and let's say you're the spouse. Let's say you, as the spouse, might die first. Now this happens because, Terry, how stressful is it being the spouse/caregiver? It's terrible. That's why you need someone like Terry. And that's why, I hate to say it, but many times we see that the caregiver/spouse might pass away before the individual who's ill. Okay. Now, if you don't say anything and you don't have a will and no beneficiaries designated and no trust, your assets will go about 50% to your spouse. Now, that spouse might be on Medicaid because we did that Medicaid application. You need to have a will as a caregiver, and the individual that is ill should also have a will for other reasons. But you need to have a last will and testament. That's document number 1. Document number 2, you need an expanded planning power of attorney. Power of attorney with an extra rider to it called a statutory gifts rider, because we have a window of opportunity where the individual has enough mental capability, enough capacity to sign the power. Now, we don't know when that window might shut, or maybe unfortunately that window is already shut. But if it's not, we want to draft a good, expanded power of attorney that we may add another 40, 60, or 80 extra provisions to that power, over and above what the statutory power is. And without those provisions, you won't be able to do the planning. So the attorney needs to draft the will and the expanded power of attorney so that the agent can create a trust, tweak the trust, fund a trust. Let's say there are more assets that came into being since the individual signed the trust, and even sign a brand new trust as agent on a power of attorney, and so many other things. So that's absolutely essential. So the power of attorney is a document where the individual would give the right to someone else. Might be a spouse, might be the children, might be a friend, but someone else to handle their financial matters. But we take that and we expand it so we could do all of the planning or just tweak some of the planning, because laws change and we want to make sure that even if the individual becomes incapacitated, we could do what we need. Don't let that window shut. Make sure that we have these documents in place. So, as I said, the attorney should draft the last will and testament. The attorney should draft the the power of attorney and the statutory gifts rider. But the healthcare proxy is a simple document. And this is something that you guys could do on your own, and you could even download the healthcare proxy on the DOH or Department of Health website, or just Google New York State if you live in New York State. New York State statutory power of attorney. It's very, very simple. You need 2 witnesses, no notary, but don't forget that the witnesses should not be anyone named as a proxy. So simple, just do it. As Nike says, just do it. Now, we also want to protect assets for long-term care needs. And Terry went over what the costs were in about 2017, and they look pretty high. That was about $12,000 a month if you're in a nursing home. And if you're getting home care, it could be maybe, it depends on what kind of care you need. It could even be more than that if you need 2 12-hour shifts from a licensed agency. It could be anything. You need to plan in advance, especially in looking at the stats that Terry had. Those stats are very scary, where 3/4 of women are going to need long-term care. Terry, that was crazy, and I don't think I've seen that one before. That's pretty scary. So what does that mean? If there's greater than a 50-50 chance that you might need long-term care, you better plan. All I know is when I go to Atlantic City or I go to Las Vegas, which I don't go too often, and they tell me that I like to play blackjack once in a blue moon, but they say that the odds of winning are 49%. So the House is 51%, I have 49%, and I lose almost all the time. So if the stats are 75% that you're going to need the care and you don't plan, that is crazy. You need to plan ahead. Hopefully, when the caregiver needs to plan. Because what if the caregiver's not around? What if the caregiver's a child or a spouse? The caregiver needs to plan. What's going to happen if that caregiver's not there? But of course, the individual needs to plan as well. So the best way to plan in most cases is to have the individual who is ill or who might be ill. We have lots of clients, I would say most clients, that create and fund a Medicaid asset protection trust when they hope they never need Medicaid. Because for Medicaid nursing home care, there's a 5-year look back. Well, what if you need the care well before then? You don't have time to transfer assets and wait 5 years. And now for home care, we will have very, very shortly a 30-month, a 2.5-year look back for Medicaid home care. And we've just gotten new clarification from the Department of Health on how that's going to work. But with a living trust, not only can we get the assets out, we know that those assets are going to be protected. Protected from what? Well, taxes is a huge issue. If assets are simply transferred directly, let's say, to children, well, then the children get your tax basis. But if you put the assets in a trust, in most cases, there will be absolutely zero capital gains taxes in the future. Zero. Instead of, in many instances, clients having to pay hundreds and thousands of dollars for taxes just by transferring the home outright to the children. So you want to use a trust. In most cases, it's the best way to do it. It also avoids probate, and also when assets are in a trust, we don't have to worry. Let's say assets are transferred to children, but let's say that child passes away. Where are the assets going to go then? Let's say that child, if you transferred assets to a child, becomes incapacitated. Well, what are you going to do then? What if there's a lawsuit against them? What are you going to do then? What if they had a business, especially now during COVID, we're seeing a lot of this, business isn't doing well, they have creditors after them, and they're sitting there holding your assets? No, we need to protect assets, not make them vulnerable. So a living trust is a great way to do it. Now you might say, well, during COVID, what am I going to do? I don't want to go out of my apartment. I don't want to leave my home. Well, we now have the ability to do virtual notarization, whether it's a will or a trust or a power of attorney, because we could do virtual witnessing, and that's on this page. We will have these slides available for anybody that wants them, so you could look through this and to see what we need for virtual notarization. It's very simple, and virtual witnessing, also very simple. So we could get all of this done now from the comfort of your living room or your kitchen table, whatever it is. It's made much easier now. And the governor has extended the time when we can do this currently through September 4th. But that's coming up pretty quickly. There's no guarantees, but I would bet my bottom dollar that the governor is going to extend this. He's been doing this on a monthly basis since April. So it keeps getting extended out. COVID is not over. You need to be careful, and the governor needs to do this, and I'm almost sure that he will. So why am I talking about, and why did Terry talk about paying for long-term care and Medicaid, and how do you do it? Well, in order to pay for long-term care, It's either going to be private pay. If you have long-term care insurance, it's going to be that, if you're lucky enough to have it. Otherwise, it's Medicaid. And that's it. Private pay, long-term care insurance, or Medicaid. Most people don't have enough funds to pay privately, or they want to preserve some of their assets. Most people cannot afford long-term care insurance, or they're not even medically eligible. And Medicare doesn't pay for long-term care. So that's why I talk about Medicaid. And right now, we just had this law passed as of April regarding a new 30-month look back for home care. Until about 2 weeks ago, we were very much in the dark about how this was going to be implemented. We have proposed regulations now that are so confusing, poorly written, so many holes in them, and we're going through that, and we're trying to see what we can do because there's a period of time we could comment on the regulations and try to, because I do a lot of work, and that's advocacy work, so that we make sure that not just my clients, but everyone in New York State, and sometimes I do it federally, will be taken care of. So in order to become eligible for Medicaid in New York, and I know there's some people from other states, but our asset level in New York is $15,750. In many other states, it might only be $2,000, which is the SSI level. In New York, and actually I changed this law with a case we had in Queens, you can have retirement accounts in payout status, and those are exempt as well. So that was a good thing. The home sometimes is exempt for home care. However, we want that home in a trust, because if the Medicaid recipient keeps that home in their name, it might be exempt, and it may not be exempt depending on the circumstances, but it might be exempt. Even if it is, though, Medicaid could recover against that home later on. So that's why many times an asset could be exempt, like the home might be exempt, but later on, Medicaid's going to get their pound of flesh. We don't want that. I'm here to preserve assets, and that's why we likely might put some even exempt assets into that Medicaid trust. You could look at the rest for the income levels, because I don't have all that much time, but it's here in black and white. We now know that, I'm just going to skip around because I only have a few minutes left, but.
You have time. You have time.
Okay, maybe I'll go another 5 minutes if that's okay. We do have this unprecedented planning opportunity. So what the Department of Health said, that yes, there's going to be a 2.5-year look back for Medicaid home care. But we always thought that that applied to Medicaid applications that were submitted as of October 1. We now know that that 2.5-year look back will only be with regard to Medicaid applications submitted on or after January 1 of 2021. So that was put back 3 months. They also said that the look back is going to be progressive. We did not know this a couple of weeks ago. So what does it mean? It means that they're only going to look back to asset transfers or gifts into trusts when we fund that trust. They're only going to look back to October 1, 2020. So what does that mean? It means that right now it's August 26th, and between now and the end of September, if we could set up that Medicaid trust and we could transfer assets, whether it's a condominium, a co-op, or even a home, or a brokerage account, or a bank account, if we could transfer assets into that trust prior to October 1 of this year. In other words, another 5 weeks. If we can do that, Medicaid for home care will never see it. It's a window of opportunity. The window will shut not in 2 months. I'm sorry, this is an older slide. I did this slide a couple of weeks ago when I heard about the news. The window will shut in a few weeks. So take advantage. Now is an unprecedented opportunity to plan, to get the Medicaid trust set, to have assets transferred into a trust, and it's a freebie. It's a gift, and this won't come back again. Between now and, well, we have to draft the trust, and we have to, sometimes client just called me and said they want to do the planning, and could we do it in time? Well, they owned a co-op. And so, yeah, we could draft the trust, fairly quickly if we had to, but we need consent of the co-op board to transfer. And that doesn't come quickly, so, I mean, there's no time. If you want to plan and do this planning and have it be a freebie, just do the planning right now, because that window is going to shut by the end of September. Now, what happens if assets are transferred now for nursing home care or after October 1 for home care? So there's a 5-year look back for Medicaid nursing home care, and there will be, for applications in as of January 1 now, a 2.5-year look back for home care applications or community-based applications submitted after January 1. So Medicaid will assess a penalty if there are gifts for every, I'm going to say about 13,000. For every 13,000 approximately, but you see where you live, if you live in any of these regions in New York, so for every $13,000 that are gifted, Medicaid will say, you got to wait 1 month. Why? Because Medicaid said, well, you had 1 month of money that you could have used for either your nursing home or your home care. But instead, you gave it as a gift within the 5-year for nursing home care or 2.5-year look back. You made a gift. And if you made a gift of $13,000, well, they would have wanted you to keep that money and keep it for your care. But instead, you made a gift. So for every $13,000, a 1-month wait. If there's, for example, $26,000 gifted, a 2-month wait. $130,000, a 10-month wait. If you have a home or co-op that's valued at $600,000, well, just do the math. If you're a New York City resident, 600,000 divided by 12,844, you're going to have a damn long wait. So do the planning in advance. You are very lucky that you're listening to this now, because this is an unprecedented time to plan, because there's only a couple of weeks left. We only found out about this a couple of weeks ago when the Department of Health finally deciphered this and gave us an idea of what we needed to do. There are exempt transfers. You could look at that later on. Of course, we look at all of this, exempt transfers of the home, but then you don't get the advantage of a trust. So we got to look at all of this and see what we're trying to accomplish. There's undue hardship. I don't have a lot of time, but I do want to say that community-based Medicaid home care will drastically change as of January 1. So you want to get the planning done before October 1. That's the freebie. After October 1, it'll create a penalty. If you do it now, even if you apply in a year or 2 years, it's off the charts. You're going to be eligible. If you did it, let's say in the month of September, you're eligible. If your assets are at or below the levels that I was talking about before, you're eligible virtually right away, first day of the next month. So you want to do the planning now. We know that pooled income trusts, now we know, just in the last couple of weeks, will work. However, It's much more complicated now working with a pooled income trust. I shouldn't say now, as of January 1, because the funding of the trust will have to be done in a very measured way. We can't just transfer more money in than we need on a monthly basis. Otherwise, there's going to be a penalty, and that will mess the whole plan up. So pooled income trusts are available, but DOH said that we have to be very careful as to how we fund those trusts. There's a new way that the hours will be assessed. There will be a prescription that will need to be written by, not by the individual's attending physician, but by an independent physician from New York State. There's a new ADL requirement with, as Terry was talking about, activities of daily living, 3 ADLs if you don't have dementia, or 2 ADLs if you do have dementia. And those are activities of daily living with physical maneuvering. So it's getting harder to become eligible for Medicaid home care. But the idea of working with someone like me to do the Medicaid application and someone like Terry who could combine forces, we will figure out a way in almost all cases to get this done. That's what we're there for. We're creative and we care. And there's no guarantees in life, but I will tell you that our Medicaid application rate is at virtually 100% for the last 30 years. Unless I told the client, it's very iffy, but if you want to give it a shot, give it a shot. But every single time that I said we would get Medicaid, we got it for the last over 30 years. So I'm very proud of that track record. We spoke about the treating physician. And if you have 12 hours or more, they're going to do an extra review, believe it or not, and try to get you off the rolls, because 2 12-hour shifts cost more than.
Ron, you froze. Ron,
Okay, he just froze.
you might want to get off and come back in, Ron, because you froze. You know what? While we're waiting,
I'm gonna go to some of these questions.
yeah, there was an amazing question. You see the second question about the father-in-law with the veterans benefit?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
There,
Yes.
yeah, you're good. You're back. Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to say the best way to plan is with a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. You want to make sure you have all the other documentation, advanced directives, so that, God forbid, if you don't have your mental capabilities, everything could happen without going to court for a guardianship action, and having a judge approve everything, including the Medicaid plan. So plan ahead. You have this window of opportunity for the next 5 weeks. We could plan even after that, but the planning is better right now. So thank you guys so much, and I'm more than happy to take questions. I'm sure Terry is as well.
Yes. There are some questions. I know people have questions about those numbers. Especially because on this line, there are a lot of homeowners in this webinar. They are really interested in the numbers around how much the house can be worth. I really want you to answer the piece around capital gains so that people really understand what capital gains really is and how astronomical those numbers really are. Because there are many people on this webinar who live in properties that were 5 figures when they bought them or when the person bought them, and they are now the recipient of them, and they're now worth 7 figures. So they've gone from less than $100,000 to over $1 million. And that capital gains tax from point A to point B, if this particular asset, and sometimes there's more than one, is not transferred properly, can bankrupt you. Can you please elaborate on it?
Oh, sure, I'm happy to. And it's a great point, Terry. Thank you. So I think the best way to talk about this is to give an example. So Terry, you started the example. So let's say you own a home and you want to protect the home and you want to transfer that home into the trust to protect it. But let's say you scratch your head and said, well, you know, why don't I do it on my own and I'll just do a deed. I'll give the home to the children outright. So let's say you bought the home 40 years ago for $90,000. Now the home is worth $700,000. There's over a $600,000 gain. If you simply transfer the home, had a deed to the children, they get your $90,000 tax basis. Whenever that home is sold, there will be capital gains taxes on about $600,000, or about $200,000 in my example, that's just thrown out the window. If that home is transferred into a trust instead, at the time of death, we get a basis step up, where at the time of death, the new basis won't be the 90,000, will be whatever the value is at the time of death. So if you bought that home for 90,000, transferred into a trust, and it's worth $1 million when you die, your children won't have to pay any capital gains taxes at all, because we preserve the basis step up. We get the asset, the home, the brokerage account out of the individual's name, but we preserve all of the tax benefits. So it's a great point, Terry. Thank you.
Terry,
Terry.
That's unmuted. The
There you
other point I would like to make, thank you for that answer, Ron, that I would like you to elaborate on the part around advanced planning, because people of color, we have kinship, right? So we take care of children, we take in people's children, and people grow up as part of a family and don't even know that they're not part of that, biologically part of that family, until someone passes away. So can you talk about that in terms of, from the court's perspective, of having an advanced care plan?
Sure. Oh, man, it is so important, Terry. Thank you for bringing that up. Biological children and adopted children have certain rights. But if you're not biological and you're not adopted, legally in New York State, you are not considered a child. And if that's the case, and let's say the individual dies without a will, you won't get a penny of the assets. Now, you might feel like you're a child. You might be doing the work of 10 children, and you might be the caregiver, the trusted individual, and the bond might be as tight as it could be, but you won't get anything. The assets of the individual might go to a distant relative based on a schedule. So it is absolutely crucial that, in my opinion, when you have a kinship situation like that, Terry, is to actually have the assets held in a trust. It's the best way to do it. And you want to back up as a will. And you want to be very specific as to who the beneficiaries are. And that is the only way to do it. If not, and we've seen that situation so many times as well, and it is so, so frustrating. It's funny, Terry, you mentioned that. I'm dealing with a situation today just like that, where the individual passed away. There was a daughter, but never adopted and not a legal daughter. There was no children. The individual had no children, but this was the daughter, but not a legal daughter. And she's not going to get anything. And it is so unfair. and they didn't come to me till now. But, you know, as Terry said, plan in advance and don't be shy. Don't hold anything back when you see me as the attorney, and don't hold anything back from Terry when she works for you as a geriatric care manager, because we need to know everything in order to help you. Thank you. And one other thing, if you don't mind, Terry, you know, I was talking about Medicaid applications, and we have a very robust Medicaid application department. We do everything digitally. We get our applications approved now in about 10 days, very, very quickly, in spite of COVID and everything else. But there's so many documents that you need to get the application together. It's crazy. So, you know, we're the attorneys. We're doing all of this work, but you need somebody to help you get this all together. And that someone is Terry. Terry is the person that will get in there, make sure that you get your Medicare card, your divorce decree, your birth certificate or baptismal certificate, bank accounts for every single month during that look back, whether it's 5 years or 2.5 years. There's so much documentation. I'm not even telling you the half of it, but you need someone to get that all together. And I can't tell you how many times without somebody, someone's assistance like Terry's, we find assets out later on that people forgot about or didn't even realize, and it messes up the Medicaid plan tremendously. And so we want everything out in the open. And we, you know, I'm assuming that you'll be honest and straight with us, but what if you just simply forgot? So let somebody go over all of that with you and help you gather all of that together, especially if you're elderly and it's a little hard for you to do that.
Yes, thank you. So there's a question here about, another question about, my father-in-law has VA benefits and refuses any help from his children. He's getting older, he's like 85, and in the near future, he'll need assistance. How can his children help him when he doesn't want help? So I often, it's so funny. I often can elicit information from people that they won't give to their children, because no matter how old we are, 60, 70 years old, they still see us as children and they have an emotional attachment. So with me, I'm just a professional. It's just like answering the doctor's question or someone else's question, and they give me the information. And people often say, how did you get that information? I've been trying to get that information for 2 years. And, you know, that is one way. Some people are just ornery and stubborn, and there's nothing we can do about it, and we're going to have to clean it up later. I mean, and that is just the truth of the situation.
Look, if someone has their marbles and they have capacity and they don't want to plan, and you try to convince them, usually when I speak to someone like Terry, I think we both, because we connect with people, you know, most people actually would plan. You know, they're in front of me, I explain it, they're nervous, and I explain why they don't have to be nervous, and they do it. But sometimes, as Terry said, they're ornery and stubborn and they just won't do it. If they're lucid, it's their money, you know, they can do whatever they want with it, you know, and that's that. If they have dementia and that's why they're not planning, then we could go to court and have a guardianship action started and a guardian appointed. And then we could do the planning with the guardian.
Yes. So someone asked, they're from Chicago. So yes, there is a network in Chicago. A lot of this information, the planning part is the same, no matter what state you're in. The numbers change, you know, the documents are basically the same. Planning is for the future, is planning for the future. We want you, no matter where you live and how old you are. This information is not for 65+ year olds. You know, for me, it's when you start around 40, 45, we need to begin planning. As we're looking at retirement, we need to begin planning. There are a lot of people now that are over 40 that are just having children. That's how old my parents was when I was born. You know, and caregiving, people live a long time now. You know, we think caregiving is for a short span of time. Sometimes it is, but it can last years. I did this for decades. So yes, there's a network in Chicago. Ron can refer some attorneys if you need them in Chicago as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and in Chicago, I really like an attorney, Kerry Peck. I think he's very, very good, elder law attorney in the Chicago area.
Yes, so I will make sure that you send that information, that question for the Chicago network to me. We'll put the slides with the information back up, and we will send you some information about Chicago. There will be a way for you to access the slides. We will
I'll be
have.
glad, yeah, I'll be glad to send the slides
Yep.
after.
Yeah, we'll have a discussion about that
Yeah.
and be able to access the slides.
Yep.
There's a question, how do you handle financial expenses when you don't have long-term care insurance? Well, I think Ron just went through some of this as terms of Medicaid asset planning. And we just stay healthy for as long as we possibly can.
As long as you can, that's the best plan, right, Terry?
That's the best plan.
But if not, that's the whole point. Let us preserve the assets, because many people can't get long-term care insurance because it's too expensive, or there's already a diagnosis of dementia. You can't get it then as well.
Yes. How do you handle these financial? No, that's the same question.
Do you have a recommendation, Ron, for elder care attorney in Western Massachusetts?
I'd have to check, but I can do that tomorrow.
Can a trustee of an irrevocable trust be a beneficiary also?
Absolutely. You may want the trustee to be someone you trust implicitly, might be a child, and you may want the child to also benefit when you're gone from the trust. So yes, of course, the child or whoever you want, the trustee, can also be a beneficiary.
What does it cost for services? Geriatric care management services for labor of love elder care, a assessment is $750. And the retainer fees are done monthly. There's some services are a la carte services, and for the most part, the services range, they're on the average of $200 an hour. There are also some packages depending on what are the results of your care plan and what you need. Some people take a care plan, put their S on, put their cape on, and they run with it. Some people need help with part of it and not the entire thing. Some people are just doing planning. So it depends. Every family is an individual. You're welcome. Glad it was an informative and amazing presentation. Can you elaborate on why a POA is not good for estate or long-term planning? I think he needs to do some clarity on that because that's not an accurate statement.
Yeah, you know, having a good power of attorney is actually essential for estate and long-term care planning. So it's wonderful, but just the statutory form, just the form is not good enough. It won't let you create a trust, amend a trust, revoke a trust, fund a trust, do Medicaid transfers, do Medicaid planning, do estate planning. We have to add lots of provisions to the statutory form. But a good planning power of attorney with all these extra provisions in it that the attorney puts in is definitely good enough. It's not only good enough, it's essential for estate and long-term care planning. So if that wasn't made clear, I hope it's clarified at this point. But you definitely need that. And in fact, the caregiver needs it as well. The individual who's ill and the caregiver.
Yes. And we're not talking about cookie cutter forms, Bloomberg forms that you just download, check the boxes, sign it, have a notary sign it, and we're done. We're talking about that form and then the provisions based on the conversation that's necessary for you and your family that goes along with that form. So it's just not those 9 pages of a durable power of attorney, and you have to have the statutory gift writer. Because oftentimes I see a POA that has no statutory gift writer. And I know Ron sees it way more than I do. It's like one side of the bread and other. It's not an open face sandwich.
Okay. The next question is, can a trust be private where the beneficiaries don't know the financial contents of the trust as one of the terms of the trust? You can. A trust is simply an agreement that's created. It's a trust agreement that actually creates an entity that holds assets. You name a trustee that manages the assets, etc. So you could put in a provision that says you don't want the beneficiaries to know what's in the trust until the time of, let's say, death of the individual who created the trust. You can do that. But the beneficiaries would have the right at that time to do an accounting, to ask for an accounting of everything that happened from the inception, from the funding of that trust. So if you want to put that in, you can. It's an unusual provision to put in, but that can be done. The trustee, though, obviously has to know everything in that trust because that's the individual managing everything.
What's the difference between home health and home care? So home health care is usually the medical part of home care that Medicare, the red, white, and blue card, will pay for. And they pay for it for a very short period of time. Like when you come home from the hospital or rehab, they will provide you with care for 2 hours a day, 4 days a week. It helps you through rehab, but based on a medical condition. So it's medical based. Home care is for your ADLs solely. So bathing, grooming, non-medical things, medication, feeding, those things are not medical. They are quality of life care, basically. But we all know it's necessary. Me personally, we all need to be talking to all of the communities that we are part of, all of the politicians, everybody, because some of these things need to change, period. Because with the changing the Medicaid laws, but more people need activities of daily living support, which they don't pay for, opposed to medical modeled home care, which they do pay for. Ron?
Yep. No, I agree. I agree. Thanks, Terry.
You're welcome from Virginia. I have someone based in Philly and needs some support and guidance to take care of her mother. Yes, I work with people outside of New York City. And yes, you can refer her for a consult. Could you elaborate on the significance of the $15 plus level? Please ensure that.
15,000.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that is the asset threshold, Ron.
Yeah, yes, the 15,750 is the asset level. It's not the monthly income, it's nothing like that. It's the asset level. So you need to have assets below that. We work with anyone in New York State, but we don't work with anyone outside of New York. We could look for someone in Philly I'll be more than happy to. Jackie, just make a note of that, and I can see if I know someone in that area. But if I don't, I suggest that you look at the National Academy of Elder Law Attorney website, naela.org, and just click where it says find an attorney, put in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and look for an attorney who's a certified elder law attorney. We call them CELA, C-E-L-A, certified elder law attorneys such as myself, and that's a safer bet as to who you're going to get.
So I have three more questions. Does look back for home care apply to the home care research or current CDPAP recipients?
Okay, well, it doesn't apply right now to CD, it doesn't apply to any home care right now at all. And it won't unless the application is submitted for home care after January 1.
So the research aren't included?
Well, and DOH, Department of Health, has told us that they'll only look back for home care to October 1, 2020. So if that's the case, again, I don't know how to say it strongly enough, you want to do the planning in the next couple of weeks, because as of October 1, if you transfer assets even to the trust, you're going to be subject to that look back. Right now, it's a freebie. So it looks like if everything is done now in the research, you'll be safe.
Mm-hmm.
The regs are not finalized. We don't know for sure, but we're almost sure that that's going to be the case.
Okay. Can you talk about handling the moving of a parent from one state to another? My mom is currently not on Medicaid in Ohio, but I'd like to get her on Medicaid because she's moving to Brooklyn.
Sure. We don't have a waiting requirement in New York. So if someone lives in Ohio and they want to come to New York, but they gave up their home in Ohio and they're making New York State their domiciliary, then there's eligibility, depending on depending on the assets and the income, et cetera. We'll look at everything. But if there is eligibility, the mere fact of moving doesn't create a problem.
Right. Thank you. Is it possible to have a POA over an individual who has a POA of an owner of a property? So the POA has a POA. So they need to get POA for somebody who has a POA of somebody else.
I'm not exactly sure I know what the question is.
Let's say I have power of attorney of my mother, but now I'm becoming incapacitated and my mother has property and I have the power of attorney, and now someone really needs to get a POA over me. And I think the part of that answer is that's the trust conversation.
Right. Well, if someone has a power of attorney over you, they don't necessarily have the power of attorney just because you are the power. They don't just step into your shoes like that.
Right.
So you don't get it that way. However, you, Terry, if you have that power for certain powers, you can actually delegate to someone else to a certain degree. So
I can delegate
certain powers
to do something for me on behalf of my mother because I have power of attorney over her.
Yes, but you're in control of that. You're supervising that.
Yes.
But if you're incapacitated, God forbid, someone else who might have your power of attorney could not, take that all the way through you to the other person.
Great. So that's really, the person really needs to take a look at putting that property in a trust if they feel as though they're, as we said earlier, as the caregiver is declining in health themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Does the dementia I got to go to the top of this question, and this is the last one. Should a durable power of attorney be executed in place before a Medicaid asset protection trust?
Okay, you want the durable power of attorney to be signed, sealed, and delivered as fast as you can before there's incapacity. Same thing with the asset protection trust. You want all of these signed before the individual will lose capacity, because then we have to go to court. So yeah, I mean, they should all be done as soon as possible, yesterday. So that's my advice.
Right. So this is a part ABC question. If the principal visits an agent of power of attorney, her adult child, in another state, is the POA drafted according to the statutory New York form valid in the other state?
Okay, it is a valid power of attorney, and it would be valid in another state as a power of attorney, although it may not be that state's statutory power, which might give you extra powers. So for example, in New York, if there's a brokerage account and it's a statutory power, that'll work with a brokerage account. It may not work with a non-statutory power of attorney in New York. So it still is a good power, but will it be recognized for everything in that other state? It depends on the laws of that other state.
As we speak about power of attorneys, we often in New York City, or probably New York State, hear the bank won't accept my power of attorney. They want their own.
Yeah,
So,
we do hear that.
yes.
Well, all I can say is that the bank attorneys for many banks are on our speed dial. And this happens a lot. We call them up, we tell them what's going on. They know us by first name. They ask us what branch, and they fix it. We've never had a problem, but this has been so rampant. I just want to let you know and let everybody know that there's a new power of attorney law that tweaks what we're doing now, that passed the New York State Assembly and passed the New York State Senate, and we're waiting for the governor to sign it or veto it.
Yeah.
Now, we thought it was a given, but at the last moment, I'm talking the last couple of days, two groups stepped forward and started having issues with it. How frustrating. But we're trying to really push to get this through so that the power of attorney has teeth to it, and banks can't say, well, I'm not going to accept it, because the law says they have to accept it.
Right. And, sometimes they say, oh, this is too old, because they did that with myself around my mother. So when she signed the POA, she had capacity. She can't sign it now. We can't change it. There's nothing that can be changed now, because now it's being executed, which means she's incapacitated. So if she's already incapacitated, how is she going to create a new document?
Right. There's no time limit on the power of attorney.
Correct.
Power of attorney is not a carton of milk. It doesn't have an expiration date.
Right.
It's good for the duration.
But the banks and these other systems, they bank that you don't know this information. So they tell you whatever they tell you and hope that you just say, okay. But
Yeah,
no, that's not the case.
Any
That's
of our
why
powers of any of the powers of attorneys that we drafted, yeah, many times a bank might say, oh, it's too old, or this or that. It's all this kind of baloney, but we get involved and we never had an issue. We may have to make a call or two, but it always gets resolved.
And then, so I'm still doing the ABCD. What's the definition of assets? Does it include property like furniture, Social Security benefits? Well, that's two different categories.
Okay. Well, furniture or personal property is not considered for Medicaid, but your Social Security is budgeted not as an asset, but as income. And if you get the slides, you'll see the chart. You're allowed to have $895 of income, but then we could use that pooled income trust. But the Social Security and a pension just comes within the income category.
And there are some exemptions. You know, a lot of people have mandatory distributions
Yes.
of their annuity, and they're in that phase where they have to take the
Yeah.
distribution.
Or from their retirement accounts, and that is deemed income. Absolutely.
Those are all considered income and not assets.
Yes.
The Medicaid applicant be the agent of a durable power of attorney.
Can the Medicaid applicant be the agent? Well, it's probably, if they're applying for Medicaid, it's not a great idea if you could avoid it. But if the individual has capacity, theoretically you could do it, but it's just not good practice.
Does a dementia diagnosis need to be made before the application is submitted?
No, 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 no.
No, not at all. I guess the more we answer, the more they ask. So someone else said, this was great, so helpful and informative. Thank you very much. What is the distinction between proxy and POA? The hell, I am my mom's proxy, but not POA. How would I know what's more beneficial? Well, it's not an either or. It's not a dire need now, but for the future reference, what must I tell my mom to get her thinking in this way?
Okay, well, what's more better?
Right.
If I rephrase this today, an apple or an orange? Because these are apples and oranges. So being a healthcare proxy, the healthcare proxy is the agent that makes healthcare decisions for someone else if they can't make them. So if you're the proxy, you're going to make healthcare decisions for the individual if they can't make them. So that's health. A power of attorney in New York State is only for financial matters. And that's where you could make financial decisions. In other states, there is a power of attorney for healthcare decision making, but not in New York State.
I am my mom's caregiver, and she has the onset of dementia. She has a tax-deferred annuity with Bear. If I needed to access those funds for her care, would my POA, which is on file with them, allow me to withdraw, as I need the funds to hire someone to care for her if I have to?
It depends on the term of the power of attorney. That's why we, the attorneys, want to draft a power of attorney that lets you withdraw the funds so that you could use it for the individual. That's a perfect example of why you need an attorney to draft the documents. Chances are that power does not have the ability to take assets out. It might give you the ability to use the individual's assets for themselves. That's different. But not to take assets out or transfer assets and do all of the Medicaid planning.
And will the Medicaid look back in New York State after October 1st, look at assets only in the spouse's name? So when they look at, so what's the new rule on the spousal refusal and all of that?
Okay, they did keep spousal refusal. We still have spousal refusal. However, on the look back, they're going to look at the assets of the applicant, of course, and the spouse for nursing home care going back 5 years, and for home care only for transfers starting October 1 in 5 weeks. They'll look at it for the spouse as well as the applicant. So spouse can do a spousal refusal in New York, likely not in almost any other state, but in New York we have spousal refusal.
Yes, New York is extremely
Liberal.
lenient, liberal in the Medicaid law. I really must say that.
Yeah.
We might think they're restrictive, but you haven't seen restrictive until you look at some states.
Yeah, that's true.
It's serious. You know, the asset levels, we think $15,000. $15,000, that's all you can have. Some,
There are some states who don't even provide home care.
exactly. And there's some that are 4 digits. So it's like you can't have $10,000.
Yeah,
So,
really.
you know, it's a lot. But the gist of all of this, thank all of you for your questions, is to be prepared. I do this, A, because I've been through it and it's not easy. B, because um, it's necessary. Um, and we need to prepare. I believe in preparedness. I really do. Um, it's really challenging to make these last minute decisions. Um, we didn't even you notice we didn't even talk about like death. So we didn't even get into funerary expenses. That's a whole other presentation that I have planned. So we didn't even get into that part of it. The the overarching reason why I do this is to create and maintain legacy. You know, especially as for people of color, it is, you know, we are often behind the 8 ball. Sometimes, you know, we need money for different things, but, you know, sometimes we look at things in a very short-sighted manner. And when someone dangles a carrot in front of us, we think that it's a golden carrot, and it is not always a golden carrot. You know, we also have to think, so why does somebody want what I have so bad? They will pay anything for it.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, we really have to think about that. That means it's worth more than I think it is, and it's worth more to them. So, you know, I get these phone calls, these scam phone calls myself, you know, and I talk to them on the phone. I don't hang up on them. There's a list of things that I do. I have a conversation with them. I report them to uh, the uh, the DA's office, and there's some other places I report them to. And I asked them, I said, well, you know, if you want to buy what I have, do you have like a 16 family unit in your inventory that you want to sell me? Because if you're going to buy something from me, I need to live somewhere. I'm not going to live in the park with squirrels in a cardboard box.
Yeah.
And the money that you're giving me, it's not going to last for so long. But what I have, any one of you on this call, if you needed some place to stay, can come and stay for even a short span of time. You know, and it's worth more as a homestead than it is as cash in my hand. And that's just for me. And it might be different for other people. But for me, the homestead is absolutely worth it because it's invaluable to have a safe place to live in New York City. So again, uh, uh, I think I covered all of the questions. Oh, thank you. Your firm prepared all of my paperwork, including the Medicaid trust. Great. So that's wonderful. Um, Tell the rest of your friends. And if you need a geriatric care manager, you can always call my office. The next question is exactly what is spousal refusal? And then after that, we are going to close out.
Okay, spousal refusal is a concept that emanates from federal law, but it basically says that the well spouse can sign a piece of paper where he or she refuses to use their assets and income to pay for the care of their spouse. Now, as long as that spouse that's not well has assets at or below the Medicaid level, Medicaid will be granted. So if that well spouse has assets of, 200,000 when she could only have, 128,000, well, then she's over. She could sign a spousal refusal and Medicaid will be granted to the ill spouse. So there are complications from spousal refusals. Medicaid could try to still go after the spouse, even sue the spouse in some cases, but so you got to know the ropes, how far to push it and how far not to push it and when to use it.
Great.
Terry,
All right.
will your slides be available?
Yes, we will. You will get an email within 48 hours as to how to receive the slides. We thank all of you for attending. We thank you for your questions. We thank you for your care and concern. I want you to definitely, as we talked about how to gather the documents, to go to the bit.ly, to the bit.ly/in1PLACE and download that infographic for the 40 docs. You can reach us via email. And me, you can also call me to to set up a discovery call where we can just chat about what you might need now or in the future. And you can feel free to reach out to Ron at rfatula, rfatula at fatulalaw.com.
Right.
Right, yeah.
And
Ron,
you
thank
can see
you.
all of this information on our slides as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Ron, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Ron and I have to having conversations together. And I always wonder, Ron is a true educator. I love, Ron presents all over the city. I see him everywhere. He presents almost every day somewhere in New York City. So I am thankful and grateful and honored that you asked me to present with you. As I said, we have a lot of fun together. We have a lot of conversations about a lot of things. And I think I liked Ron before, but when I found out this one tidbit of information about you, Ron, that really
Uh-oh, now I'm getting nervous.
don't get nervous. And that was, I heard, and you can confirm if this is true or not. Yes, I'm putting you on the spot here, that you wanted to be a social worker at some point.
Oh, I went to social work school right before law school. Yep. I was at Brandeis. I was at the Heller School for a PhD in social work. But I was thinking social work, law. I wanted to do good, make changes. I opted to go to law school as well. So I started social work school, but I finished law school.
And that explains why your approach is the way it is.
Yeah.
And that's what really took it over the top for me. I was like, see, I knew there was a reason. And that's it. So I am just, over the moon to be able to have a dialogue with you and to be able to provide education, information, and hopefully action taking to everyone who attended the call today for the webinar.
Terry, thank you so much as well. I really appreciate it. You're absolutely terrific. And a big thanks to Jackie Rockamel, who put this whole thing together. And Jackie, we can't thank you enough. So as always, you did an amazing job. So
Thanks.
Terry, thank you. Jackie, thank you. And you guys were terrific. And I hope everyone learned something here today.
And we'll be doing more with Terry. Don't keep the lookout.
Yes, we will. We have some other things planned that we will go into. We will break down like the healthcare proxy. We will break that down, and that's all we're going to talk about. And we'll go into POAs, power of attorneys, and that's all we'll talk about. The same thing with a trust, and we will break it all down so that you can always come with your questions prepared. But in the meantime, I want you to take action. The first action step is to get the 40 docs guide so that you can begin to gather all of your documents before you call Ron for a consultation. Before you call Ron for a consultation. Have some, because the list is long. of what you need in order to begin putting together a Medicaid application. So it's not 5 things, it's a long list of things. So we need you to get those documents together. Both of us, a Labor of Love Elder Care and Fatula Law, is into helping you, having you age successfully, plan in case of an emergency, and we're both into handholding. One of the things we do at a Labor of Love Elder Care is hold your hand through the process. Sometimes Ron's office calls me to hold people's hand as we walk through the process. And that's what we do. And we do it with love, care, and concern. So thank you all. Thank you, Ron. I will be talking to you. Jackie.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
And
Thank
again,
you,
thank
Terry.
you. Take care, everyone. Be well, be safe.
Be well and
Thank
be safe and be
you
sane.
so much. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.